Hello YouTube, quick video here. I want to talk about Dustin Segers' explanation of not so much the laws of logic, because we could talk about that all day, but about induction in Bible Thumping Wingnuts video. Logic proves God's existence, or something like that. So Dustin Segers states that the problem of induction has no solution in the history of philosophy, which is patently false. There are few solutions in the history of philosophy to the problem of induction. Most of them are deflationary, that is, induction doesn't exist. For instance, induction is a myth. It's a misrepresentation of how things actually work. I've been spending a little more time with Meillassoux writing recently, and I think it's an extremely fascinating way to treat both the questions of logic and induction as well. I think Meillassoux gives a really interesting account. I don't necessarily want to subscribe to it, but I want to present it as an alternative, quite radical alternative. So the problem of induction basically states that you cannot, through a posteriori means, you cannot, from the basis of experience, derive necessity, right? So if we watch things happen in the world, no matter how many times you view it, you can't get to necessity. Which means, of course, that there's no reason to believe that the laws of nature are necessary, right? You can't demonstrate, for instance, that causality is necessary. Causality, to pick David Hume's famous example. And especially given the case that logically speaking, we can imagine an effect without a cause, without contradiction. So there's no logical reason why, there's no a priori reason why causality should hold. Now, if you want to spend a little bit more time with the problem of induction, then I suggest you read David Hume's book, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, which is where the problem originates from. It's very easy. It's originally written in English, which is rare in the history of philosophy, and for English speakers it makes it a very easy read. It's a very good book, and Hume's a very good philosopher. Now, Meillassoux' solution to the problem is to turn the question on its head and say, well, look, why would you assume that the laws of nature are necessary in the first place? Why do they have to be necessary? So he tries to assert that no, the laws of nature are actually contingent and can therefore change at any time. Immediately this begins to look like a really wacky picture of the universe. This entails the rejection of the principle of sufficient reason, and turning on its head into what he calls the principle of factiality, or the related principle of unreason. The notion being that there is no reason why things are the way they are. There is no reason for the fact that the chair is the chair and not something else. There is no reason that when a billiard ball hits another billiard ball, the second billiard ball moves in a predictable way. In fact, the first billiard ball can hit the second one, and it can poof into a bunny rabbit, or it can explode, or it can do all these different things which it normally we wouldn't expect it to do. So all of that's allowed under Meillassoux' system. This comes down to what he asserts as the necessity of contingency. The only necessity is that everything is contingent. And if you start to look at that, right, if you look at that as a principle, then non-contradiction just kind of falls out of it. And he demonstrates this in his work. He says, for instance, if everything is necessarily contingent, the law of non-contradiction has to hold, because A needs a not A that it could possibly turn into. If A and not A were simultaneously represented in a thing, then that thing would be necessary and it would not be contingent. So the law of non-contradiction, again, just falls out of the principle of factiality. There are a few other things that just fall out of it quite naturally. But it gives a metaphysical account of why the laws of logic necessarily have to exist. Now, it's a pretty big bullet to bite, right? To say that no, the world is only regular. Nature only appears to be uniform for no reason, right? And it could become not uniform at any given time. And the basic objection to this is that, well, when we look around the world, does it appear uniform, right? We don't see a billiard ball poofing into a bunny rabbit. We don't see this kind of thing happen. And what Meillassoux says is that, well, all right, if everything operates, or if everything looks the way it does for no reason, why would you expect it to look any other way? It's actually a really compelling counterargument, I think. So he tries to develop this out into an actual metaphysical viewpoint. The solution to the problem of induction is that the problem of induction is insoluble, because what it tries to problematize is false. And again, get some really compelling stuff out of there. It's a very difficult bullet to bite, which makes me not necessarily want to subscribe to it. But doesn't it seem to be begging the question to ask why everything is uniform? It assumes, you're assuming in there that there has to be an explanation for why things have to be uniform. And why would you assume this, right? Yeah. Just some really quick thoughts. I gotta run to work, so I tried to make this as quick as possible. Hope you guys followed it. And hopefully over the weekend I'm going to get around to doing a rebuttal to Inspiring Philosophy's interpretation of the Book of Job, because I think that there's a more interesting way to interpret it. Alright, have a good day, guys.